The time by Caracris is 6 p.m. and this is CBX Business News. The business news headlines are brought to you by QMax Wealth Management, making more possible. Housing outpaces inflation, a multi-million euro deal, and Canada's new wealth fund. Good evening and welcome to CBX Business News for Tuesday, April 28, 2026. I'm Rashel Moncrieffe. Thanks for joining us. Coming up, Jamaica's Prime Minister warns housing prices are rising faster than inflation, intensifying affordability pressures. Also ahead, the Caribbean community secures a 32 million euro climate investment deal with Germany aimed at boosting resilience and green growth. And later, Canada launches a sovereign wealth fund targeting long-term growth and greater economic resilience. Stay with us as we unpack these stories and more right after the break.
Agribusiness is by definition risky. You can make money for 11 months and lose money for the year. So my father was a big believer in integrity, in good business ethics. That goes without saying. That was fundamental, that was non-negotiable, still is. And so he set about cobbling together a series of partnerships, acquired the land, and developed what then became the largest banana farms in Jamaica.
I'm trading stocks to achieve my financial goals.
I'm also trading stocks to achieve my financial goals.
Start a conversation with the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
Check jamstockx.com for information and a list of registered stockbrokers. You can also call the Jamaica Stock Exchange at 876-967-3271 for information on how to begin. I am achieving my financial goals.
I'm achieving my financial goals.
The local news is brought to you by Derrimon Trading, better from the start. The Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments. Welcome back to CBX Business News. We begin with a growing affordability crisis in Jamaica's housing market. A growing affordability crisis is emerging in Jamaica's housing market as new data indicate that prices continue to rise faster than inflation, raising concerns about long-term economic stability. Speaking at the Galena housing groundbreaking recently, Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness revealed that housing costs have shown a consistent upward trend year after year, with little evidence of moderation.
So whenever there is a housing deficit, two things will happen. The first thing that will happen is that the price of housing will rise continuously. Almost every year. I cannot recall a year in Jamaica where housing prices have fallen. Can you? Or even remain stable. In fact, housing prices move much faster than inflation.
Holness says rising housing costs could tighten access to home ownership, particularly for lower and middle income earners.
If we allow this housing deficit situation to continue, what will happen is that house prices, even for houses that should be for the affordable and lower income segment will continue to increase out of reach.
That was Jamaica's Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness. A sharp reversal in consumer sentiment is now emerging in Jamaica's economy as post-election optimism fades under the weight of rising prices and weakening household support systems. Presenting the latest Jamaica Chamber of Commerce Grace Kennedy Business and Consumer Confidence Indices report, Executive Chairman of Market Research Services Limited, Dr. Don Anderson, says consumer expectations have shifted sharply. Recent data now shows a near-even split in outlook as economic pressures intensify, particularly in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa.
Where we know very, very narrow gap between those who expect the economy to get better and those who expect it to get worse. 36.3% said they expected to get better, 32.6% said they expected to get worse. Signs of the times, and again, it's all as a result of the challenges that we faced as a country coming out of Melissa.
At the same time, a key financial buffer for many households is weakening. Anderson says the proportion of Jamaicans receiving remittances has fallen to 28%, down from a pandemic-era peak of 35%.
We had a peak of 35% of households receiving remittances in 2020, COVID. Now, that has never gone back anywhere near that. And in fact, over the last year, and currently, we have 28% of households receiving remittances, and that has a serious impact on people's ability because we've also plotted data which shows that very little of what people receive in remittances is saved. Much of it goes towards meeting daily household expenditure, and therefore it's a band-aid solution for a lot of people.
That was Executive Chairman of Market Research Services Limited, Dr. Don Anderson. We move to a major leadership shake-up at Jamaica's central bank. Jamaica is preparing for a major transition in monetary leadership as Finance Minister Favour Williams announces the start of the search for a new governor of the Bank of Jamaica, BOJ. The move comes ahead of the end of tenure for current Governor Richard Biles on August 18, 2026. The government says the process will be transparent and rooted in good governance, with a focus on identifying a leader to maintain economic stability while accelerating financial system reforms. Key priorities include expanding digital payments, strengthening financial inclusion, and ensuring that monetary policy gains translate into jobs and investment across the economy. A 4-member search committee has been appointed, led by former IMF Deputy Secretary Calvin McDonnell and supported by legal, academic, and financial experts. In financial news, Mayberry Jamaican Equities is reporting a $2.08 billion net loss for the first quarter of 2026, as declining stock market valuations weighed heavily on its portfolio. Speaking during an investor briefing on Monday, Mayberry's Senior Vice President for Investment Banking, Dan Theok, pointed to unrealized mark-to-market losses, paper declines tied to falling share prices as the primary driver behind the outturn.
For the quarter ended March 31st, 2026, that MJ had total unrealized losses, a net loss of $2.083 billion, which is actually a 4.7% improvement over the prior year. If we look at that in detail, we'll see where the fair value loss for associates was $1.54 billion, roughly the same as it was in the prior year, while interest expense jumped to $323.5 million, and operating expenses were fairly flat at $49 million. When you put that all together, that's what fundamentally results in that $2 billion loss for the quarter.
Theok says total assets fell by 10% to just over $16 billion, while equity declined 18%. He notes that Supreme Ventures Limited, SVL, was also responsible for the bulk of the first quarter decline.
The result was that the total assets, being primarily the equities that we hold in the portfolio, fell by 10% to $16.3 billion. Total equity fell by 18% to $9.9 $9 billion, and the net book value per share of the fund is now $8.28. So if we go on to the next slide, I'd like to talk a little bit about what's driving some of those losses. $1.54 billion in unrealized losses from marking to market. And our largest equity position is in SVL, which represents about 55% of the total portfolio. And you'll see of that $1.54 billion loss, $1.1 billion alone is attributable to the marking to market of SVL.
That was Mayberry's Senior Vice President for Investment Banking, Dan Theok. We move to the latest updates from the JSE equities. In Tuesday's trading session, the JSE market activity resulted in the trading of 107 stocks, of which 47 advanced, 35 declined, and 25 traded firm. Leading the winners are Elite Diagnostic, Cargo Handlers, Caribbean Cream, and Indus Pharma Jamaica ordinary shares, while leading the losers are Salada Foods Jamaica, General Accident Insurance Company JA, Mayberry Jamaican Equities, and Productive Business Solutions 9.2% perpetual cumulative USD. The main index advanced by 2,428.38 points to close at 343,849.53 points. The junior market index also advanced, but by 67.08 points to close at 3,234.82 points. It's time for the Market Education feature, brought to you by CARICRIS, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. In today's Market Education feature, we're looking at insurance premiums. An insurance premium is the amount paid by an individual or business to keep an insurance policy active and maintain coverage against potential risks. Premiums apply to various types of insurance, including health, auto, home, and life policies. The cost of a premium is typically based on factors such as the level of coverage, the type of policy, and the risk profile of the insured. Understanding how premiums are calculated can help you choose the most suitable coverage while managing your expenses more effectively. That was the Market Education feature, brought to you by CARICRIS, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. And that's it for the local news segment. Please stay with us. The regional news is up next. The local news is brought to you by Derrimon Trading, better from the start. The Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, Tease the Senses, and Pulse Investments.
It feels so good right now. Feeling so good right now. Yeah, yeah. It feels so good right now. Feeling so good right now. Yeah, yeah. It feels so good right now. Don't never, ever, ever wanna calm down. No, no, no. Yeah, yeah.
Welcome back to CBX Business News. It's now time for the regional business updates. A new stream of European capital is now flowing into the Caribbean, targeting climate, energy, and next-generation industries. CARICOM has secured a €31.9 million funding agreement with Germany, backing a multi-year push to build climate resilience and open up new economic frontiers. On Thursday, the CARICOM Secretariat revealed the activation of the deal through 6 implementation agreements, setting in motion a technical cooperation program running through to 2029. Projects will span biodiversity protection, blue and circular economy development, and the conversion of organic waste and sargassum into commercial products, alongside investments in climate-resilient energy systems. The program also targets skills development, policy reform, and pilot projects designed to build competitiveness and create jobs in emerging green industries. CARICOM Secretary General Dr. Carla Barnett says the initiative supports the region's long-term development agenda, with Germany expecting real economic returns across member states. Meanwhile, Belize is preparing to eliminate one of the biggest frictions in its financial system: payment delay. The central bank has moved to introduce a real-time payment platform designed to process transactions in seconds, not hours or days. The project, being developed by Monetran Corporation, will power the Belize instant payment system known as BIPS. In a recent press release, the bank notes once live, users will be able to send and receive money 24/7 using phone numbers, email addresses, or QR codes with built-in request-to-pay functionality. The central bank also revealed that transactions are expected to clear in under 10 seconds, marking a major upgrade in speed, efficiency, and access. Meanwhile, the platform is targeted for a first quarter 2028 launch, positioning Belize for a more agile, digitally driven financial ecosystem. Barbados is now weighing a strategic energy play with potential direct access to Venezuela's oil and gas reserves. Following bilateral talks in Bridgetown on Monday, Venezuela acting President Delcy Rodriguez invited Barbados to invest directly in hydrocarbon projects. Rodriguez says the partnership could secure long-term fuel supply while opening a new channel for cross-border investment. At the same time, Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley says the discussions also focused on reducing the country's exposure to global energy price shocks.
We have for some time been speaking about the possibility of deepening bilateral cooperation between Venezuela and Barbados. In our own instance, we have the Barbados National Energy Company, which, while small, is in a position to work with others to be able to better invest jointly in the fields that are being offered for us, to be able to see how best we can expand our capacity and become more resilient, and to ensure that we maintain affordable access to energy products.
Prime Minister of Barbados Mia Mottley. And in the Bahamas, a critical shift is underway to bring more individuals and businesses into the formal financial system. On Monday, Central Bank Governor John Roll says the bank is exploring the introduction of a basic banking account facility, which forms part of a broader push to improve financial inclusion. Executive Director of the Organization for Responsible Governance, ORG, Matthew Aubrey, notes that greater access to banking can help individuals build credit, access financing, and participate more fully in the economy.
They're baking bread, they're cutting hair, they're doing all these types of things. But they're also not contributing into any of the tax bases that we see. And more importantly, in a space where we live at risk of things like hurricanes, they don't have a footprint, so that if something gets demolished, and we saw this in Abaco and Grand Bahama, it's almost impossible to replace that. You don't have infrastructure, you don't have data, but you also don't have the ability to tap into loans or grants that could help to restore that. So when we talk about inclusion, when we talk about creating access into a banking system, which I really do commend the central bank for pushing forward this this accessible banking line, it really is a start for folks to be able to then build on a foundation that can progressively lead them into being able to be more resilient or thriving.
That was Executive Director of the Organization for Responsible Governance, ORG, Matthew Aubrey. Meanwhile, Managing Director for Scotiabank Bahamas, Roger Archer, says Scotiabank Bahamas is simplifying its onboarding requirements for lower-risk customers.
What I've seen is that we've simplified the approach that we can take with our clients based on the risk that they're bringing to the bank. And it's a lot easier for us to onboard clients who are doing simple transactions now. Even as we were talking before, one of the things that we are looking to do is with our existing commercial clients, our corporate clients, to the extent they have employees who may not have what I consider the traditional documents, working with those employers to find ways to onboard those clients so that everyone can have access to banking. And that's a project that our retail team has started this year, working with our commercial banking team.
That was Managing Director of Scotiabank Bahamas, Roger Archer. It's now time for news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 15 securities, of which 6 advanced, 4 declined, and 5 traded firm. Today's winners are Trinidad Cement, First Citizens Group Financial Holdings, Guardian Holdings, and Massey Holdings, while leading the losers are Ansa Merchant Bank, National Enterprises, the West Indian Tobacco Company, and Republic Financial Holdings. Trading activity resulted in the following movements. The All-TNT Index advanced by 3.01 points to close at 1,395.93. The Composite Index also advanced, but by 1.56 points to close at 963.21. The cross-listed index remained at 70, and the SME Index also remained, but at 89.81. And we take a short break, but please do stay with us. The international news segment is up next.
Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances Limited has been a part of Jamaica's manufacturing landscape for over 20 years. By crafting unique flavors and fragrances, we have become a part of your favorite household and food items, such as beverages, ice cream, household cleaners, and much more. Known throughout the Caribbean for the highest quality, we continue to innovate with strong leadership, a dedicated team with integrity. We go the extra mile for our customers. Create the next taste sensation. Contact us at 876-9235-111 or visit our website, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn pages.
Welcome back. Turning now to the international scene. The Canadian government is moving to strengthen its long-term economic position with the establishment of a sovereign wealth vehicle, the Canada Strong Fund. The fund will target strategic sectors including energy, trade infrastructure, critical minerals, transportation, and data systems, areas officials say are key to competitiveness in a rapidly shifting global economy. Speaking at a press briefing on Monday, Prime Minister Mark Carney announced the fund will co-invest alongside private sector partners with the aim of generating sustainable wealth.
The Canada Strong Fund will invest alongside the private sector in nation-building projects to create wealth for Canadians today and our kids tomorrow. And if you have a bit of extra money, we'll make it easy for you to invest in the fund to help build Canada strong for all.
That was Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. Meanwhile, global markets are reacting sharply to rising energy costs and shifting expectations for interest rates. Gold prices fell more than 2% to $4,580 per ounce, their lowest level since late March, as rising oil prices and stalled U.S.-Iran negotiations intensified inflation concerns. A U.S. official says President Donald Trump rejected Iran's latest proposal to resolve the two-month conflict, reducing expectations for a quick end to energy supply disruptions. Although gold is typically viewed as a hedge against inflation, rising interest rates tend to weaken its appeal as the asset does not generate yield. The Federal Reserve is widely expected to leave interest rates unchanged, with investors closely watching for signals on the policy path ahead. Meanwhile, the Bank of Japan kept rates steady in a split decision, with other major central banks also expected to hold while signaling a more hawkish stance. In energy markets, attention is now turning to a key global shipping route at the center of the conflict. European natural gas futures slipped to about 43.4 euros per megawatt hour as markets assess developments surrounding Iran's proposal to reopen a critical shipping route. The White House confirmed that U.S. officials are reviewing the offer, but emphasized that key conditions for ending the conflict remain unchanged. Iran's proposal reportedly involves reopening the Strait of Hormuz in exchange for the U.S. lifting its blockade on Iranian ports, with separate discussions on Tehran's nuclear program to follow. This comes after a second round of talks in Pakistan collapsed over the weekend, with both delegations withdrawing. The strait remains largely inaccessible, disrupting the movement of roughly one-fifth of global LNG supplies. Traders are also monitoring Europe's LNG imports as the region works to rebuild gas storage ahead of the winter season. And amid these global pressures, smaller central banks are also treading cautiously. The National Bank of Hungary has left its benchmark rate unchanged at 6.25% in its April meeting, marking a second consecutive hold. The decision reflects a cautious stance amid rising global risks, including geopolitical tensions linked to the Iran conflict, which have lifted energy prices and increased inflation pressures. Meanwhile, uncertainty over domestic fiscal policy is keeping the central bank in a wait-and-see position as authorities assess plans to address a widening budget deficit. This comes despite inflation remaining below the bank's 3% target, with annual inflation at 1.8% in March still near multi-year lows. And that's it for the international segment of the newscast. The news recap is coming up on the other side of the break.
Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances Limited has been a part of Jamaica's manufacturing landscape for over 20 years. By crafting unique flavors and fragrances, we have become a part of your favorite household and food items such as beverages, ice cream, household cleaners, and much more. Known throughout the Caribbean for the highest quality, we continue to innovate with strong leadership, a dedicated team with integrity. We go the extra mile for our customers. Create the next taste sensation. Contact us at 876-9235-111 or visit our website, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn pages.
And now to recap our top stories. In the local news, Jamaica's Prime Minister warns housing prices rising faster than inflation. Regionally, CARICOM secures €32 million Germany climate investment deal. And internationally, Canada launches Sovereign Wealth Fund to drive growth and boost resilience. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Rashel Moncrieffe. Thanks for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.